Imagine being miles away from civilization, surrounded by towering pine trees, where the wind doesn't whisper, it listens, where the silence feels heavy, almost alive. Tonight, we take you into the heart of that silence. A story born not from imagination, but from the eerie whispers of those who dared to venture too far into the woods. This is unexplained phenomena from a remote cabin. If you think you've seen everything, think again. It was mid-October when Elias Renford, a freelance documentary filmmaker from Manchester, received a strange email. The sender was anonymous, just a single name, M. Alden. The message was short, almost cryptic. There are things happening in the Blackridge Woods. Come if you want the truth. Bring your camera. Don't come alone. Elias thought it was a prank, but the timing was curious. He had been looking for a subject for his next paranormal investigation series. Curiosity got the better of him. Within a week, he convinced his two close friends, Talia Karen, a sound engineer from Bristol, and Rowan Klein, a photographer from Chicago, to join him. The journey to the cabin took hours longer than expected. The further they drove, the narrower the path became. Civilization faded behind them. No phone signal, no GPS, only the sound of gravel crunching under the tires. By the time they reached the end of the dirt road, dusk had already settled in. The air was thick, damp, and carried the faint scent of pine mixed with decay. "There it is," Rowan muttered, pointing ahead. Through the fog, the shape of a cabin emerged, a lonely silhouette against the deep woods. Its windows were dark, and the wood looked aged, almost blackened by time. Elias turned off the engine. "Well," he said with a forced grin, "this is it, the famous Blackridge cabin." But Talia didn't smile. "I don't like this," she murmured, staring into the dense trees. "It feels wrong." The cabin interior was worse than they expected. Dust coated every surface. Cobwebs hung like tattered curtains from the ceiling. In the corner stood an old rocking chair, its wood splintered and worn. A cold draft slipped through the cracks in the window frames, making the candle flames flicker uneasily. They unpacked their equipment: cameras, recorders, EMF sensors, and night vision gear. Elias wanted to start filming immediately. "This is day one." He spoke into the camera, his voice steady but his hands trembling slightly. "We've arrived at Blackridge Cabin, the site of multiple reports of unexplainable activity, lights, noises, and missing hikers. Our goal is to document and understand what's really happening here." Behind him, the camera caught something strange. Just for a second, barely visible, a faint movement in the reflection of the window. A shape, too tall and too thin, slipping past the tree line. That night, after setting up the equipment, they gathered around the old fireplace. The wind outside howled like distant screams, and the creaking of the old structure made the silence unbearable. Rowan broke the tension. "So, Elias, who exactly sent that email?" Elias shrugged. "No idea. The name could be fake, but they knew about the reports. Maybe it's someone who's seen something. Or something," Talia added under her breath. Before Elias could respond, there was a thud, a heavy, sudden sound from the back room. They froze. Talia grabbed her flashlight, her voice barely above a whisper. It sounded like something fell. Elias stood up slowly. "Stay here," he said, though his own voice betrayed his nerves. He walked toward the sound. The floorboards groaned with each cautious step. The air felt colder as he approached the narrow hallway leading to the back room. When he pushed the door open, nothing. The room was empty, but the old rocking chair in the corner was moving. Slowly, back and forth. Elias called out, "Guys, come here." Rowan and Talia rushed in. They watched in silence as the chair continued to move on its own. Rowan whispered, "There's no wind here. It's completely sealed." Elias raised his camera, filming every second. "It's happening already." But before they could react further, Talia's recorder crackled to life. A burst of static filled the room, followed by a voice, soft, distorted, and hollow. "Why did you come back?" Talia dropped the recorder. The sound cut off. None of them spoke for several seconds. The fire in the main room flickered violently, throwing jagged shadows on the walls. Elias whispered, "We're not alone." That night, none of them slept. The woods outside seemed alive, branches tapping against the windows, distant whispers echoing through the darkness. At 3:07 a.m., one of the motion cameras captured something at the cabin door. A hand, thin, pale, pressed against the glass. But when Elias opened the door moments later, no one was there. Only a small mark remained on the frosted glass, like fingerprints. But longer, too long. By morning, the cabin felt different. The air was colder, heavier, as if something unseen lingered in every corner. Talia sat by the window, staring into the mist outside. Her eyes were sunken, her face pale. She hadn't slept a single minute. Elias walked in, holding his camera. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "I heard it again last night." The voice. It said something new. Rowan looked up from the table where he was cleaning a lens. "You're sure it wasn't the static?" "No," Talia whispered. "It said my name." The silence that followed was suffocating. Elias didn't say anything, but his hand trembled slightly as he turned the camera toward her. "We need to record everything. Every sound, every detail." They began reviewing the footage from the night before. On one of the motion cameras facing the door, the pale hand was visible again, but clearer this time. The fingers were long, unnaturally thin, and bent in impossible angles. There was no full body, just that hand pressing against the glass and then vanishing. Rowan froze the frame. "That's not human." Elias leaned closer. "What's that behind it?" In the grainy footage, barely visible in the background, was something like a shape, a faint outline in the woods. A face, perhaps, but twisted. Talia covered her mouth. "That's right outside." The group decided to explore the area behind the cabin in daylight. The forest felt endless. The trees stood unnaturally still. No birds, no wind, not even the sound of insects. Only the crunch of leaves beneath their boots. About 50 yards behind the cabin, they found something strange, a circle of stones, arranged neatly in the dirt. Inside the circle lay a rusted lantern and what looked like old animal bones. Rowan crouched down. "This looks like some kind of ritual spot." Elias filmed closely, zooming in. Or maybe a warning. Talia's voice broke the tension. "We shouldn't be here." They turned back toward the cabin. But as they walked, Elias noticed something that made his blood run cold. His own footprints were gone. The ground behind them was untouched, as if they had never walked that way at all. Back inside, the cabin had grown darker, though it was still mid-afternoon. The light from the windows seemed to fade, like something was swallowing it. Elias checked his camera battery. It was dead. Every device they had was draining fast. Recorders, lights, even their phones. Rowan frowned. "This doesn't make sense. We charged everything last night." Talia whispered, "It doesn't want us recording." A low humming sound filled the air, deep and steady, almost like a vibration coming from beneath the floorboards. Elias knelt down, pressing his ear to the wooden planks. "It's coming from underneath us." They found a small hatch in the floor, half hidden beneath an old rug near the fireplace. Rusted iron hinges held it shut, and the wood was splintered. Elias hesitated. "Should we open it?" Talia stepped back. "Elias, don't. We don't even know what's down there." But curiosity was stronger than caution. With effort, he pried it open. A cold gust of air rushed upward, carrying with it a foul, metallic smell. The beam of his flashlight revealed a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Rowan's camera flickered as he filmed. "This must be some kind of cellar." Elias nodded. "Or something else." They began to descend. The stairs creaked under their weight, the sound echoing through the tight space. The deeper they went, the colder it became. At the bottom was a small room lined with stone walls. Old shelves filled with jars, photographs, and strange symbols scratched into the stone. Talia whispered, What is this place? Elias moved the flashlight across the wall. Dozens of handprints covered the stone, each one smeared in dark red. Some were small, child-sized. Others were long and distorted. Rowan whispered, "Someone's been down here recently." But before Elias could respond, the light flickered again, and for a split second, they saw it. A shadow standing in the corner. Tall, still, watching. Then, darkness. When the light came back on, the corner was empty. But the camera Elias was holding suddenly powered on by itself. Even though its battery had been drained moments ago, the red recording light blinked. And from its speaker, a distorted voice emerged. Faint, trembling, broken by static. "You found me." The camera fell from Elias's hands. They bolted upstairs, slamming the hatch shut. None of them spoke for several minutes. The only sound was the fire crackling weakly in the fireplace. Rowan broke the silence. "We need to leave. Now." Elias shook his head. "Not yet. We need to understand what's happening. This isn't random." Talia's voice trembled. "Elias, that thing spoke. We shouldn't be here." But before he could argue, the lights flickered violently, and then every door in the cabin slammed shut at once. The windows rattled. Something was moving inside the walls. The whisper returned, low, almost like a growl this time. "Don't go." The floor vibrated beneath their feet. The sound of footsteps echoed across the ceiling. Slow, heavy, deliberate. And then, silence. They stood frozen. Talia whispered, "It's upstairs." Elias slowly turned his camera upward toward the old staircase leading to the upper floor. At the top, just barely visible in the dim light, was a figure, motionless, head tilted to the side. Its face was covered by long, wet hair. And then, in one sudden jerk, its head snapped toward them. The moment the figure turned its head, Elias froze. His breath caught in his throat. For a brief second, he couldn't tell if he was awake or dreaming. The thing at the top of the stairs didn't move, just stood there, its long, tangled hair dripping as though it had just come from rain. But outside, it hadn't rained in days. Rowan slowly raised his camera, whispering, "Elias, it's looking right at us." Before Elias could respond, the figure began descending the stairs. Each step made a hollow thud that echoed through the cabin. The lights flickered violently, throwing the shadow across the walls like something alive. Talia screamed, "Get the door, Elias, open it." He rushed to the front door, yanking the handle, but it wouldn't move. It was locked tight, though no one had locked it. Behind him, the creaking of the steps grew louder. Closer. Elias turned back. The figure was gone. The staircase was empty. Only silence. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then a whisper echoed from behind the walls. "Close. Too close. You shouldn't have come back." Rowan spun around, flashlight trembling in his hand. "Who's there?" The whisper turned into a soft, wet laughter. It crawled through the air, shifting from one side of the room to the other. Talia pressed her palms over her ears, tears streaking her face. "Make it stop. Please make it stop." The laughter ceased. Then the sound of something dragging, like nails scraping against wood, came from the ceiling. Dust fell from the rafters. The air turned icy cold. Elias forced himself to speak, his voice shaking. "Whatever you are, we just want to understand. Why are you here?" Silence. Then, faintly, from the far corner of the room, the old radio crackled to life. A voice came through, broken and faint. "They never left." Rowan approached it cautiously. "What do you mean? Who never left?" The radio hissed, the static building until a distorted scream burst from the speakers. Every candle in the room went out at once, plunging them into darkness. In the blackness, Elias fumbled for his flashlight. When it flicked on, he froze. Talia was standing by the window, her face pale, her eyes wide, but she wasn't moving. "Talia," Elias called. No answer. He stepped closer. Her body was trembling. She was staring out into the woods, whispering something under her breath. Rowan came closer too. "What is she saying?" Elias leaned in to hear. Her whisper was faint, broken, repeating the same phrase again and again. It's not one, it's many. And then her eyes rolled back. She collapsed. They carried her to the couch, trying to wake her. Elias shook her gently. Talia, wake up. After a few seconds, she gasped and sat upright, eyes wild. It's in the woods. It's all around us. Rowan looked toward the window. Through the fog, movement flickered between the trees, dark, shifting shapes. Not one, not two, but many. Figures moving just beyond the light. Elias grabbed his camera again, whispering to himself, "We need evidence. We need to document this." He stepped outside, the cold air biting his skin. The fog hung thick, swallowing sound. The trees loomed like black skeletons against the gray sky. Rowan followed reluctantly, holding a flashlight. "Elias, this is insane." "I just need a few seconds of footage," Elias said. "Then we'll go back inside." The camera lens caught flickers of movement, shadows darting between the trees, too fast to focus on. Then, from behind them, a branch snapped. They turned. A figure stood only a few feet away. Its face was expressionless, the skin stretched unnaturally tight, as if it had been dried and preserved. Its mouth opened slowly, too wide, too wrong. "Leave before it takes you to." Elias stumbled back, his voice barely a whisper. "Before what takes us?" But the figure was already gone. They ran back to the cabin. Inside, Talia was pacing frantically, muttering under her breath. "It's connected to this place. The stones, the handprints, the cellar. It's all part of it." Elias looked at her. "Part of what?" "The binding," she said. "Something was trapped here. Something that feeds on anyone who enters." Rowan frowned. "How do you even know that?" Talia looked up, her face pale. "Because it showed me." Elias's stomach turned. "What do you mean, showed you?" "I saw them," she whispered. "The people who disappeared. They're still here. Not alive, not dead, just trapped." Suddenly, the radio crackled again. A male voice this time, soft and trembling. "M. Alden, they won't let me leave." Elias's eyes widened. "That's the name from the email." The voice continued, fading in and out. "It wants me to stay to replace, to..." The transmission cut off with a sharp burst of static. Rowan slammed his hand on the table. "That's it. We're leaving. Now." Elias nodded reluctantly. They grabbed their gear and rushed to the door, but when Elias turned the handle, the door didn't budge. It wasn't locked. It just wouldn't move. And then they heard it again, footsteps. Not upstairs this time. Behind them, inside the room. Slow, deliberate. Talia whispered, "It's here." Elias turned slowly, the flashlight trembling in his hand. In the corner by the fireplace, a shadow began to rise, stretching along the wall, growing taller, darker, until it touched the ceiling. Too faint, hollow eyes appeared within it. And then, in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once, it whispered, "You opened the door below. Now it's open forever." The lights shattered, and the cabin was swallowed in darkness. When the light shattered, the darkness felt alive. It wasn't just the absence of light, it was presence. Thick, suffocating, pressing against their skin like invisible hands. Elias could barely breathe. Somewhere beside him, Talia whispered his name, her voice trembling. "Elias, it's everywhere." He switched on his flashlight, the weak beam cutting through the black. Dust particles floated in the air like ash. Rowan stood by the door, his face ghost pale, eyes wide with terror. "It said the door below is open," he muttered. "What does that mean?" Elias swallowed hard. "The cellar." They all turned toward the hatch near the fireplace. The rug covering it was gone, as if it had been dragged away, and the hatch was wide open. A foul stench filled the room, wet, metallic, like decayed iron. The same smell from the cellar. Talia clutched her recorder. "We need to close it." Elias shook his head. "No, we need to see what's happening down there. We have to understand this." Rowan grabbed his arm. "Understand what?" "Elias, people died here. That thing in the cellar. It's not meant to be found. But Elias was already moving toward the hatch, his camera trembling in his hands. He pointed the flashlight into the darkness below. The stairs looked different now, wetter, as if something had soaked them from beneath. They descended again, the wooden steps groaning. Each breath they took seemed heavier, harder to draw. The walls were cold and slick to the touch. When they reached the bottom, the air was thick with a hum, a deep, vibrating tone that felt like it came from the earth itself. Elias scanned the room with his light. The handprints on the wall were fresh, wet, and beneath them, a large wooden chest had appeared, something they hadn't seen before. Its surface was carved with the same strange symbols they'd seen outside around the stone circle. Rowan whispered, "That wasn't here yesterday." Elias crouched down. "Help me open it." Talia shook her head violently. "No, Elias. Whatever's in there, it's not supposed to be touched." But curiosity once again drowned out fear. Together, Elias and Rowan pried open the chest. Inside were old photographs, scraps of paper, and a thick leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed, edges burnt. On the first page, in smudged handwriting, were the words, "The cabin is the key. The door must remain closed." Elias turned the page. There were drawings, crude sketches of the cellar, the woods, and figures with long arms and hollow faces. Beneath one of the drawings was a name written several times in dark ink. M. Alden. Rowan leaned closer. "That's the same name from the email." Elias continued reading aloud. "They built this cabin to contain it. The stones around it are not a ritual, they are a barrier. Every 50 years, the boundary weakens. I was chosen to watch, but it calls to me. It wants me to open the hatch. It wants out." The next lines were smeared, but one sentence stood out, written in frantic strokes. "Once the door below is opened, it will not close again until it finds another." Elias's hand trembled as he closed the book. He wasn't just documenting this. He was warning us. Suddenly, the humming stopped. The silence that followed was so deep it hurt. Then came the whisper, clearer than ever, right behind them. He failed. The flashlight flickered. Elias spun around and froze. Standing at the far end of the cellar was a man. His clothes were torn, covered in dust. His skin was pale, almost gray. His eyes, empty but aware. "M. Alden," Elias whispered. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if recognizing his name. "You shouldn't have come." Rowan stumbled backward. "You're alive." Alden shook his head slowly. "No, not anymore." He stepped closer, his voice breaking into static like an old recording. "It needs one of you now. One to stay. The balance must be restored." Talia backed away, her breath quickening. No, we're not staying here." Alden's eyes turned hollow black. "You already let it out." The ground beneath them began to tremble. Dust and fragments of stone rained from the ceiling. The symbols on the wall glowed faintly red. Elias shouted, "We have to get out. Move." They rushed up the stairs, but halfway up, Talia screamed. Her foot sank through a rotten step, and before Elias could grab her hand, something from below, pale, skeletal fingers, wrapped around her ankle and yanked hard. She screamed as she was pulled downward. Elias and Rowan both lunged, grabbing her arms. For a moment, the three of them struggled, Talia's body half in shadow, half in light. But the pull was too strong. With a violent jerk, she was gone. Only her scream echoed, fading into silence. Elias and Rowan stumbled into the main room, slamming the hatch shut. Elias fell to his knees, his face pale and drenched in sweat. Rowan's voice cracked. "We have to go. We have to go now." Elias stared at the hatch, his voice barely a whisper. It took her. Then, from beneath the floor, came the faint sound of a woman's voice. "Elias." He looked up sharply. It was Talia's voice. "It's okay. It's beautiful down here." Elias shook his head, tears in his eyes. "That's not her." The walls began to pulse faintly, the wood creaking as if breathing. The sound of footsteps echoed again, Many this time, all around them. From the hallway, from the attic, from beneath. Rowan grabbed Elias's arm. If we don't leave now, we'll end up like them. Elias looked toward the door. The handle, which had been stuck before, now hung slightly open. The night outside was still and silent. They exchanged a glance and ran. The forest swallowed them as they sprinted down the narrow dirt path. The fog was thicker than ever, swallowing their flashlight beams. Behind them, faint laughter echoed, dozens of overlapping voices whispering their names. When they finally reached their car, Rowan fumbled with the keys, hands shaking. Elias turned back one last time. Through the fog, he saw the cabin, dimly lit, windows glowing faintly red. And in one of those windows, a shadow stood. Talia. Her eyes were black, and she smiled. They drove in silence for miles before stopping. Elias turned on his camera, voice trembling. This is Elias Renford. It's October 19th. Talia's gone. The cabin, it wasn't haunted. It was a prison. Something's inside it, something old. And we set it free. He lowered the camera, staring out into the trees. If anyone finds this footage, don't go near Blackridge Woods. Don't go near that cabin. Rowan looked at him. Elias, do you hear that? A soft whisper came from the back seat. It followed us. The car roared down the desolate mountain road, its headlights slicing through the fog. Neither Elias nor Rowan spoke. The world outside seemed frozen. No wind, no wildlife. Only the rhythmic hum of the tires against the gravel. Elias gripped the steering wheel tightly. His knuckles were white. It's following us, he muttered. Rowan glanced at the back seat, his flashlight trembling in his hand. I keep hearing it whisper my name, he said softly. It's been whispering since we left. The sound was faint, but there, beneath the noise of the engine, a distant, rhythmic breathing. It wasn't either of them. Elias turned up the radio to drown it out. But the static that came through wasn't random. It was speaking. You left it open. You left it open. The two men stared at each other. Elias slammed the radio off. It's not real, he said, though his voice shook. It's not real. But deep down, he knew. Nothing since that cellar had been real. They reached a small motel just outside Blackridge County. The neon sign buzzed weakly above the entrance. Inside, the walls smelled of mildew and cigarette smoke. The man at the reception barely looked up when they asked for a room. Room 12. 2 beds. 1 lamp. Thin curtains. Rowan dropped his camera bag on the floor and sat on the bed, his hands shaking. Elias, we need to go to the police. We need to tell someone. Elias laughed bitterly. And say what? That we opened a door to hell in a cabin no one even knows exists. Rowan's voice cracked. I saw her, Elias. I saw Talia's face in the window. She wanted us to stay. You think people won't believe that? Elias didn't answer. He just stared at the wall. That night, Elias dreamed of the cabin. He stood inside it again, the air cold and silent. The hatch was open, and from below came a dim red glow. Talia's voice whispered his name, gentle, almost pleading. Elias, come back. It's so quiet now. It's waiting for you. He tried to turn away, but his body wouldn't move. His feet were rooted to the floor. Then he saw them, the faces in the walls. Dozens of them. Some human, some not. Their mouths moved in unison, forming the same words. The door remains open until you return. He woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. The room was pitch dark. Rowan, he whispered. No answer. He reached for his flashlight, turning it on. The bed next to him was empty. The sheets were soaked in blood. Elias stumbled back, his heart pounding. There were footprints, bare, wet, leading from the bed to the bathroom door. The sound of dripping water echoed faintly. He called out, Rowan? The bathroom door creaked open. Inside, the mirror was fogged, even though there was no steam. Slowly, letters began to appear on the glass, drawn by invisible fingers. Come back. Then, from behind him, Rowan's voice, soft, calm, wrong. Elias. Elias spun around. Rowan stood in the doorway, pale as bone, his eyes hollow. His clothes were soaked as though he'd just climbed out of water. "It wants you," Rowan said. His voice was layered, his tone and something else beneath it, deeper, older. "It won't stop until you return." Elias backed away. "You're not him." Rowan smiled faintly. "I wasn't supposed to leave." And then his face split, not with blood, but with shadow. The lights flickered and went out. Elias bolted from the motel room, stumbling into the cold night. He didn't stop running until the building was a fading speck behind him. The fog had followed him, thick and crawling along the ground like smoke. Every direction looked the same, and then he saw it, a light in the distance. At first he thought it was a car's headlights, but as he got closer, the outline of the cabin emerged from the mist. Its windows glowed faintly red, the same as before. He stopped, shaking his head. No, I drove hours away." But the cabin was there, waiting. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, everything was as it had been. The fire crackled weakly in the hearth. The rocking chair moved slowly, creaking with each sway. And on the floor, his camera, still recording. Elias picked it up with trembling hands. The screen flickered to life, showing a distorted reflection of the room. In the footage, he saw something he hadn't filmed before, the moment they left the cabin. As he watched, he saw himself and Rowan running into the fog, but in the background, a figure stepped out of the shadows in the cabin doorway. It was him, another Elias, watching them leave. The real Elias dropped the camera, his breathing shallow. "You never left," a voice whispered from the darkness. The walls began to pulse with red light. The handprints reappeared, glowing faintly. The floorboards beneath him creaked, and the hatch slowly began to open on its own. Talia's voice came again, soft and inviting. "Elias, come down. It's waiting." He took a step back, but his body wouldn't obey. His feet moved toward the hatch on their own. The air grew thick, electric. From the cellar below, faint shapes moved, whispering. Dozens of faces stared up at him from the darkness, some twisted in pain, others smiling eerily. Among them, Talia and Rowan. They all spoke in one voice. "The door needs a keeper." Elias's flashlight flickered, then went out completely. The last thing he saw before the darkness consumed him was the cellar glowing red, and his own reflection in the lens of his camera, smiling. And no one ever saw Elias Renford again. Weeks later, a hiker passing through the woods reported hearing faint voices near an abandoned cabin. Authorities found nothing, except a single camera lying in the dirt, still recording, battery drained to zero. What was released that night in Blackridge Woods? Was it a spirit, a curse, or something much older? No one knows. But some say, on quiet nights, you can still hear Elias's voice whispering from the trees. It's open now. If you made it this far, you're braver than most. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more chilling tales, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever experienced something you couldn't explain? Tell us your story. We're listening. And remember, sometimes the scariest doors are the ones you never meant to open.